Hi, welcome to this Surrey FA webinar designed to support clubs during these uncertain times. On this call run by Surrey FA, you have me, Mike Gilham, Head of Football Development. You have our Chief Executive, Sally Lockyer, our Head of Marcoms, James Chadwick, our Head of Governance and Discipline, David Miller, and our Head of Operations, Andrew Dickinson. We're also really delighted to be joined by Danielle Warnes, who's the National Club Services Manager from the FA. And between all of us, we're going to try and support clubs by recording this webinar, explaining how you can plan and get through these uncertain times. It's a really uncertain time, as I said, and there's many risks to clubs that we are aware of at the moment. And this list here on this slide evidences some of those. It's not an exhaustive list. There's many other risks that are out there for clubs. But clearly the biggest one is a loss of income at the moment and loss of regular revenue. For many youth grassroots clubs, that could be certain events such as summer tournaments, which are really big revenue generators for clubs, unable to run those at the moment. And then for other clubs that might operate as other entities with facilities or with staff, there's a real issue around paying those staff, paying rates, keeping on top of all of the business finances that you may have. Aside from that, there's a real risk at keeping players engaged. We know that young children aren't at school at the moment, and many parents are having to try and homeschool their children. And we just know that it's a really uncertain time. So this webinar and this talk here is designed to try and take you through a process called business continuity planning to try and help you as a club identify some of the risks, mitigate them, and come up with a club-only action plan. So what is business continuity planning? And without teaching anybody here how to suck eggs, because we appreciate that there might be many of you in our grassroots football community that do business continuity management as perhaps part of your day job, but also many of you may not have heard of it before. So the slide sets it out, but we're trying to identify the objectives of our plan and set some goals, and we're trying to identify the risks that there are to our business, and in this instance, our club. What are we trying to achieve? So we're trying to have a successful business plan that can then support some actions to come out the other end of it. And we've got a tool that we'll share with you in a moment that supports you to do that. And it's really important that those actions and those risks are as specific as they possibly can be to help your club develop the most robust plan out the other end of the process. You'll know as a club that you've got a whole skill set of people, either within your direct committee or within the wider team within your club, especially if you've got a club with many teams. So there'll be a real broad set of skill sets within your club that you should use. You've also got many articles and constitutions and other things that you have to set up as an entity. So it's being really clear on what types of support you've got out there to help yourself, and being really clear on what documentation you've got that can inform your planning. You have other things, as I've mentioned, such as your constitution, such as your articles and legal documents that can support your planning. And it's being mindful that you pull these out and have a read through to know exactly what it is that you're trying to protect your business against and what the key risks are for your business. This is a bit of a list of, again, what could happen, and it comes from a further resource that we'll share with you from Sport England's Club Matters. And these are sort of finger in the air, but this comes out of some of our own risk management that we've done and our business continuity planning that we've done. The slide speaks for itself, but these are some of the risks, that the things that could happen in the future and some of the issues that we could encounter as clubs moving forwards. I mentioned earlier being really specific, and I'm sure many of you have heard of sort of SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time related. When we share the business continuity tool with you in a moment, it'll be really key that you remember SMART objectives and try and be as specific as you possibly can. The continuity tool that I'll share with you in a minute looks a little bit like this. So we'll move on from that and spend more time rolling through it in a moment. There's some top tips here on the slide for you to consider when you embark on your business continuity planning process. I'll leave them on the slide for you to read, but it's around really thinking blue sky about the future. and trying to involve the relevant skill sets of people within your club, be that your immediate committee or wider club members. Try not to panic if you do pull out many risks. There are many other support networks out there to help you. The most sort of appropriate one really is us as a Surrey FA. We're here to support our clubs. And if you're really panicking or if you've got any questions, come and get in touch with us and we can help advise. On the subject of further support, I'm going to share some additional ones now. This will all be sent out to you, but there's a Sport England have got a Club Matters resource, which is really worth looking at. And again, there's some further information on business continuity planning from Sport England, as well as our own template, the FA's template that we'll share with you. We've shared this previously, and you might have seen this via a direct email from us or via our social media presence and our website. But the most appropriate source of funding at the moment is this Sport England Community Emergency Fund, where you can apply for grants. We've already had some football clubs achieve some of this funding. Really recently, we were talking to a club that had been awarded near enough the £10,000 mark as well. So it is out there, it is happening, and it is there to support clubs. There will be further support coming as well. We're sure of it, and it's a case of watching this space, and we'll keep you updated. There's further information here on the Sport England funding to support you if you were to embark on an application with them. Again, please feel free to get in touch with us, any of the members of the team on the call, and we can support you with that. There's further support here from government. Again, you may have already seen, and this is really appropriate for maybe perhaps our larger clubs that have premises or have constitutions as businesses. So there's a business support offer here directly from the government. Again, have a look at the government's website. Get in touch with us at the County FA if you need further support. It's a continuation of the government support here, the coronavirus job retention scheme if any of our clubs are employing staff. Likewise, if you've got staff that work within your club on a self-employed basis, there's some support there too, and you might have already seen this. Just going to move on to share our business continuity template and talk you through it. So you should be able to see on the screen now, this is the business continuity planning template we'll share with you and we'll make available to you. The first port of call to call out is that it's an Excel spreadsheet. I'm sure many of you have used Excel spreadsheets. If you have, you'll be able to find your way around it fairly easily. The first thing to sort of point out to you is this how-to guide button. Speaks for itself, really. Within it, it explains the purposes of this spreadsheet, how it works, what the different pieces are. I'll leave this for you to read when we send it out. But if you get stuck, there is a how-to guide, which is almost the first thing to point out. The further resources are underneath this button here, some of which I've mentioned, but further resources to more support for you as a club are there too. Back to the home page, the tool works across mainly three key areas. So the first one is over here on the left in blue. It's your business risks. So in here, if we were to just open this will be where you log all of the risks that could happen to your business. And this is where you'll need that creative thinking and blue sky thinking. And you'll be able to score the risk here on the likelihood of the risk happening and then the impact of that happening. Really important that you score that and give that some thought, and you'll see why in a minute. There's always an example at the top here. So one example could be that our number of our committee members ends up being reduced, and that has an impact obviously on volunteers. The likelihood is a 3 out of 5, but obviously the impact's a 5. It's quite a big impact for the club. So our risks are logged here. The next piece, which is really important, is cash flow. Again, really similar. You will have there's a template here of all the different types of cash in and out that you might have as a club. Again, it's not exhaustive. There might be other things you need to add in here, but it will help you with your cash flow forecasting. So you can punch your numbers in here, and you guys will know this because it will be bespoke to your clubs. There's also then a financial risk table that's pulled out. So what I should have said actually back on here on the risks, when you score your risk between the numbers on the screen, 3 or 5 or whatever you score, dependent on the risk, likelihood of the risk and the impact of the risk, you'll get this table on the bottom here where your risks will be plotted. Likelihood on the left hand side versus impact. Anything that's really highly likely and has a high impact will come up in this top corner here, the top right hand side, the red ones. Those are the most urgent risks and the most, highest impact risk for your club, versus down here on the bottom left hand corner where it might be really unlikely and it will have a lower impact. So you'll get a risks table and you'll get a financial risk table in the same format. The last part of the spreadsheet is your action planning, and that will pull out of your risk table. So as soon as you've got your risks identified within the table, it will pull out an action plan. You can start to work on your action plan for you as a club. The action planning is done now, and I would suggest this is your most immediate risk. So what do you need to deal with now? And then action plans for the future, and what can we start, stop, and continue to do in the future. So there's an overview there of the toolkit that we'll share with you. As I've said throughout this call, feel free to reach out to anybody at Surrey FA, any of the members on the call if you need support. Before I close the call, I'm just going to hand over to Danielle from the FA. This is an FA tool, and the FA went through this nationally last week. So Danielle, is there anything I've missed or anything else you want to point out to our clubs?
Thanks, Mike. No, really good overview of the plan and the ways in which to hopefully compile the plan. I think just a few things from me. Mike, you quite rightly mentioned the top tips. I definitely recommend clubs and leagues just having a look at that. There are lots of good people in your clubs that have a vast range of skill sets, I'm sure. If you do identify anyone that or an area that maybe isn't supported yet from kind of a volunteer capacity, it's a really good time to go out there and seek what other skills you might be able to get in from your current membership, just to try and help you in this interim, possibly. So definitely revisit that. I think, as Mike mentioned, the risk table and the financial risk table can maybe look a little bit daunting. But don't worry, the guys at Surrey are there for you to support you. I think if things are flagging up as red, have a chat with those guys. I've obviously mentioned some support mechanisms that are out there through government, Sport England, etc. They've also got a wealth of knowledge to be able to support you and try and guide you and move some of those risks that have been identified as red maybe into amber or green. And also the risks, again, might be daunting, but it's also potentially a really good opportunity to reassess where you are as a club. I know one of the examples there was around potentially having a reduction in volunteers, but actually it could be a really good opportunity for you to begin to sell your message around who you are as a club, what you do, and maybe what support's required. I appreciate obviously sensitive times, so your messaging would obviously have to be and take into consideration where we are in this current climate, but it's also an opportunity. Yes, it's a risk currently, but it's an opportunity as well. So don't necessarily see all the reds as something quite daunting. I think the final thing to add from me is if there are any risks that you have highlighted, whether that be financial or kind of from a football operational perspective, there are some guidances by Muckle, which is a legal law firm that the National FA commissioned to support clubs and leagues with. So there's a whole host of topics on there. So if, for example, a financial risk from yourselves has been logged as a result of an overseas tour that you've planned for pre-season, and you're under kind of contractual rights as an example, there is some guidance out there on Muckle. So I'm sure Mike and the team will be able to direct you to them as well. So hopefully this is a good tool to at least help you identify where you are as a club, but more importantly, help you and guide you to get you out the other side and be ready for when football's ready to start again. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Danielle. Hopefully this resource is useful to clubs. As Danielle and I have both said throughout the call, if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with any of us at Surrey FA.